One of my favourite instances of homebrew that I've encountered, other than my own of course, was made by none other than the one and only Matthew Mercer, called the Blood Hunter, which is an incredibly imaginative class that is simply dripping with lore and edgy boy cool factor, and which pushes the boundaries of the game mechanics in amazingly inventive new directions, giving the class a totally unique identity that is quite unlike any other. The link to his free rules for the Blood Hunter class is in the description box below, right next to my total class rework of the Barbarian called the Fury Barbarian. You should take a look at both of them for free right after this video! However, as much as I love Matt's Blood Hunter on so many different levels, it is not without its problems. Here is my top 6 reasons why the Blood Hunter is actually bad. Let's go through them, shall we? Number 1. It uses the rules chassis of the default ranger from the player's handbook, which was laughably underpowered at level 1, and that means that this class suffers a similar fate when starting out. It's not quite as bad as that absolute dumpster fire, but it's pretty darn close. Number 2. One of the coolest Blood Hunter mechanics is the idea that by using blood magic, you can choose to lose hit points to use or enhance some of your edgelord class features. However, the number of hit points you lose when you do this is completely random, and at early levels, one unlucky roll can result in you losing what feels like a massive chunk of your hit points, leaving an opening for an enemy to down you in 1 or 2 hits. Number 3. While there are plenty of options for the Blood Hunter to choose from during the character building process, there is no flexibility after that point. There are 8 blood curses to choose from at first level, but once you've chosen your single blood curse that you know, that's the only one that you can use, and you don't get any more options until level 6. There's no point early on where you're like, I can only use my Blood Curse a limited number of times. Blood Curse 1 is useful right now in this moment, but I could also wait and hope that an opportunity to use Blood Curse 2 comes up in the future, as that might be more impactful to the combat overall. Nope, we don't get any kind of brain utilization for quite a while, so instead, switch your brain off. You've only got one flavor of ice cream and you'd better like it, because that's all you're going to be eating from now on. To compound this problem still further, you also have to wait all the way until level 6 just to change that one blood curse that you do happen to know for a different one. 6 entire levels of not being able to adjust your build. What were you thinking, Mercer? This is total madness. Even bards and sorcerers get to swap out a spell they know each time they level up in the class. Number 4. Okay, so maybe there's only 1 or 2 types of things that you can do as a Blood Hunter, I get it. So how often can you use them? Maybe you can use them a lot. Well, no, actually, you can't use them a lot. Once per short rest. At mid-levels, you get something like 2 per short rest. At high levels, you get to use them 3 whole times per short rest. Eventually, at the very highest levels that most campaigns don't even reach, you may get 4 or 5. To put this in perspective, the average number of short rests that most adventuring groups get each day in the current format is 1 or 2. That means that you get to do 1 or 2 things from your features, and the rest of the time you just have to make weapon attacks. Ah, I see. Because you don't get to use them very much, this means that they must be pretty impactful, right? Well, again, not really. Imagine, if you will, a first level spell. Now, halve the effectiveness of that first level spell, but make it into a bonus action or a reaction. That is the sort of effect that you're going to be getting with your Blood Maledict once per rest. That is to say, if you spend some hit points first. If you don't spend the hit points, you can halve your expectations for how effective it will be again. While short rest mechanics absolutely do have their place, and I would say that features like Blood Maledict do work quite effectively at the higher levels within this framework, it is very hard to have fun at the earlier levels, which is where most people will be playing, when you have like 2 things that you can do, and they are both hyper-specific and only usable once per short rest. There's next to no flexibility and variety to your turns, and next to no decision making, which hampers your enjoyment of the overall experience. Welp, I did the one interesting thing I can do this combat. Time to hit things with a sword again. That sword may be on fire, which is cool, don't get me wrong, but it's just extra damage, really. Not much thought is required after that point. Number 5. So how do you get a flaming sword? Flaming swords are pretty nifty. Well, you start by stabbing yourself with your sword like a total badass to activate your Crimson Rite feature. Then, choose a damage type, and the sword now deals extra damage of the chosen damage type. Only, because this is the Blood Hunter class, and you may be noticing a pattern here, you only have one damage type to choose from, the one that you picked during character creation, at least until level 7, so you don't actually have a choice to make until then. You just do the one thing. Initially, your singular option gets to be cold, fire, or lightning damage to empower your sword. Unfortunately, because the only thing you get with the choice is the damage type itself, you can safely ignore cold damage as an option. This is because while fire damage has similar amounts of resistance and immunity as cold damage, more things are vulnerable to fire damage, and it at least has some utility, such as stopping quite a large number of monsters from regenerating if you hit them with it. And as for lightning damage, significantly fewer monsters are resistant or immune to it than they are to fire or cold. Cold is simply the odd one out. The exact same problem exists at 14th level, which is where you get to choose between necrotic, psychic, and thunder damage for your special super duper esoteric rite. Again, you can safely ignore necrotic damage. Not only are undead a common go-to villain for a lot of game masters, but significantly more creatures are resistant and immune to it than the other options, and nothing is vulnerable to it. Your best option is probably psychic damage, as almost nothing is resistant to it, even if a few things, such as mindless constructs and a handful of boss monsters, are notably immune to it. Alternatively, very few things are outright immune to thunder damage, although significantly more things are resistant to it, which is basically just a list of any incorporeal creatures you might encounter. Number 6. The subclasses are all really cool conceptually and in their flavor, but they have a very wide variation in power level. Lycan is far and away the top dog, gaining a bonus to AC, damage resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, and you have these claws that you can set on fire and deal massive damage, and you attack with them multiple times, and that's just at level 3! It's absolutely insane! Meanwhile, Mutant is the thinking man's choice, giving you a bazillion really cool options to choose from. You can drink a potion to give yourself a buff, but there is also a side effect to each one that gives you a penalty, so choose carefully. This class is literally marketed to you as Batman on steroids. You find out who you're going to be fighting against and prepare some potions that will give you an edge. Unfortunately, this concept is rather undermined by the fact that you have to finish a short rest in order to make a specific potion. So you have to scout the enemy, come back, take a short rest, make the specific potion you need, and then go and fight. And on top of that, you cannot switch up the handful of potions you know how to make either, so just like before, you have to wait 4 or 5 levels in order to change them. Oh, you don't have the formula for the potion you need to fight the bad guy? Too bad. I guess you'll have to stick with the most generic options that are broadly applicable in most situations, and you won't ever actually get around to doing the whole Batman part. The Profane Soul is the subclass where you wish you were really playing a Warlock right now, which is understandable. Warlocks have excellent flavor that ties in perfectly with the Blood Hunter's edgelord themes, and we haven't seen a baby Warlock subclass before. It's like an Eldritch Knight, but you have a cool patron dude who you can hang out with. It's great. But, unfortunately, Warlocks are mechanically quite clunky and restrictive in their spell list and options, and the Profane Soul hasn't been properly adjusted to take that into account. And again, because it's 1 or 2 spell slots that you get per short rest, most people that I have seen tend to just use it to cast Hex or something and call it a day, which is disappointing. And then you've got the Ghostslayer, the Slayer of Ghosts, a bit of a weird name for it, but they get a special Crimson Rite that deals radiant damage, which is the second best damage type in the game. So, what does this mean? It means that they have no reason whatsoever to use any other damage type for Crimson Rite. So go ahead and turn your brain off some more. Good, we're on brand. What else is there? Your Crimson Rite sheds bright light around you like a worse torch. You get 1 extra use of that 1 blood curse you know each short rest, which makes you feel like that class feature actually exists prior to 7th level. You can eventually walk through walls for short periods of time. Oh, and you're only really good at fighting against undead. I wish I was joking, but that's basically just it until the really high levels. I'm getting a bit carried away. So, To reiterate, I think Matt Mercer is a really cool dude and will probably be much cooler and more successful than I will ever be. He is also exceedingly busy due to being, you know, a famous celebrity and voice actor for video games and animation, who runs a highly lucrative D&D podcast, and has also helped work on the Critical Role animated series, and so it makes sense that he might not have the time to thoroughly playtest the class and balance it perfectly. What I'm saying is, while I stand by my criticism, I think that everyone should rightly cut him some slack here. And while the Bloodhunter certainly does have some teething issues, to put it mildly, it is not, in fact, a turd. Rather, it is a diamond in the rough, destined to one day become a sparkling jewel. And I say it is one of the best mainstream homebrew classes out there. Gosh, Mr. Wizardly, you're such a killjoy, raining down hate on Matthew Mercer's glorious creation without offering any solutions? How pathetic. I see you typing there, but don't you dare hit send, otherwise you're going to have to delete that comment in shame. Because in my next video, I'm going to reveal to you my 100% free rework of the Bloodhunter class. Subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so that you do not miss it. I want you to be able to frolic in the meadow in the moonlight like the total edgelord you secretly are. Get on board! The Mr. Wizardly train is soon going to leave the station, our destination. Fun Bloodhunter times in D&D. Please like the video. Tell me what you think about the class in the comments below. How would you go about fixing some of these problems? Am I totally right? Am I totally wrong? Tell me. I will probably give you a YouTube heart hug. Unless you're really, really mean and make me cry. And don't forget to check out the free homebrew content in the description box down below. Thanks for watching. This is Mr. Wizardly, signing off.